Tonight I want to talk about the blog this week. Of course, I was late getting it out because I usually publish it on Mondays, but I was a little sick this week, so I was a little late getting it out. But it's called "What Would You Do If You Were What Would You Do If It Were You?" And really, what it's about in the long run, I'm going to tell you how it starts, is just about developing a sense of understanding for other people. So in the blog, I talk about how I can remember in high school, being in high school and college, really being very opinionated about a lot of different issues and topics, and not really having a whole lot of understanding of others' opinions about those issues or topics, but just really wanting to get my opinion out there and express my opinion and not listen to others. But as time went on and I became a teacher, I quickly learned to be a better listener. It didn't mean that I was any less judgmental of others, but I learned to listen to my students, because I never wanted to push my views on them, so I never told them my viewpoints on anything, and I always wanted them to be able to express their opinions to me without feeling like they didn't have an opinion that counted. So never told them my opinion, but even though I was a better listener, I still remained very judgmental. When I had my opinion, I remained very judgmental about it. And so a girl in my class one time, when we were talking about immigration, really taught me how to be less judgmental about things that we were talking about, because we were talking about immigration in my class at the time. And I was always that type of teacher that didn't really shy away from controversy. If it had happened in history and we were studying about it and it was still happening today, we were going to talk about it. And I invited them to capture some quotes from about immigration from their parents or grandparents or community members, and bring in the quotes the next day. And so we had a class discussion about it. We had a great class discussion. Their opinions on the issues range from one end of the spectrum to the other. And again, I didn't tell them my opinion about it. I just let them talk and let them express their opinions about it. The next day, I got a letter from one of my students on my desk, and on my desk it said, the first sentence said, "Miss Knox, I am an illegal immigrant." And I was kind of shocked at that letter and that statement, because as a teacher, you really don't question if your students are illegal or legal. We just kind of teach students. We don't really question whether, who they are or where they come from. That's not anything we're privy to know. But I went on to read her letter, and it talked about where she came from, which was Honduras, and her life there. And she talked to me about, in the letter, how she didn't have any clean water, she didn't have any food usually. She had to go out and get her own food, and it was usually chicken. How she had to walk everywhere she went, and how gang violence was really a problem. Even when she was walking to school, she never knew if she would survive or make it home. And so I went on and read the letters. It talked about how her mother sent her to live in California with a lady who ended up abusing her and starving her almost to death before she finally made it to North Carolina. So I just kept reading the letter and never knowing that this was her story. And at the very end of the letter, she asked a question, and she said, "Miss Knox, what would you do if it were you?" And so that made me think about, what would I do if it were me? Never really considered it before. I've never had to fear for my own food. I can drive an hour and be with my family. I can pick up the phone and call my family. I've never had to fear for my life. I've never had to walk to school. So I don't really know what I would do if it were me, and it really made me think about people's perspective. Now, I'm not saying that I agree with anything illegal. I don't. But at least it helped me to understand another perspective. And I think that's what the whole point of the blog is about, is that, in our society today, when I log on to Facebook or I read the news, or I'm watching the news, I see so much divisiveness and so much controversy. Sometimes I read comments on different things, and I really, it's heartbreaking sometimes to see the lack of understanding of people. But I think sometimes if we hear people's story and we know their lived experiences, then we will be able to at least empathize with them. Doesn't mean that we're going to change our opinion. It doesn't mean that we are going to agree with them, but at least we know where they're coming from. That's why sometimes in our society, we may have different opinions than our grandparents or our great-grandparents, because we lived in a different generation than them. We have different lived experiences from them, but we can learn from those experiences and those conversations from them. So teachers, I think in the classroom, opening up dialogue to sometimes sensitive and controversial issues, especially if you're a social studies teacher at age-appropriate level, is important to teach our students understanding. I always did this. I was very honest with my parents and my students to let them know that, look, in here we're going to talk about things that happened in history. We're going to talk about current events that are happening today. Part of the civic mission of schools is to prepare students to be citizens. And I think as citizens in our society, we have to learn how to be able to talk to each other, to be able to understand each other, and to be able to reach a consensus about issues. It doesn't mean we're always going to agree. It doesn't mean I always have to take another person's side, but at least I can talk without being judgmental or without casting a judgment upon others. And that's something that's hard to do. I even still struggle with it myself, even having this background and what my students have taught me. So I just ask you as teachers, don't shy away from those issues in the classroom. Invite your students to talk and share their opinions so that they can understand each other. I think that's how they'll be more productive citizens when they get out into our society. And over the course of this month, we're going to be looking at on the blog, and every time I go Facebook Live, we're going to look at ways in which we can bring civil discourse, all right, into the classroom where students can really talk to each other and understand each other's perspectives on different issues in our society today that they're going to face when they're facing now, and they're going to face when they become citizens. Our students are our future, and they're our future problem solvers. And I believe that you can't solve a problem without talking about it. And that's in anything. That's in a relationship. That's with parenting. That's with teaching, and that is with our society, with solving our problems in our world. So we have to be able to talk. And we have to be able to at least listen to each other a little bit more, talk a little bit less sometimes, and understand each other's perspective. So I am not going to be long tonight. I know I'm usually long-winded, but thank you guys for joining me, and I look forward to hearing your comments, and then we will again talk about, for the rest of the month probably, ways and strategies in which to do this. I'll probably introduce a new strategy each week. So thank you again, and I will see you guys next time.